Do you want more? More time, more balance, more love, more sex, more money, more real, and less bullshit? This is the Women Wanting More podcast with Dr. Karen Osborne. Real life, real stories, plus real tips to get you more of what you want.
Oh my God, sister, have you seen A Star Is Born? The new one with Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga. Turn off this podcast, go see it right now. It is phenomenal. It's one of those movies like, I can't really compare to The Greatest Showman, but it's just, for me at least, I think it's a lot like that. The music, the messages. There's a lot of podcast ammunition I will be getting off of that movie, but here's one, okay? So Bradley Cooper's character, which, by the way, isn't this so cool? I read this. He produced and directed that movie, Star Is Born, but he worked for 18 months learning how to sing and play guitar. Not just a good-looking man, but holy shit, commitment, right? So when you hear him singing, like, that's him singing. Lady Gaga, of course, who's singing and playing, and he's playing as well. And there's one song that's called Maybe It's Time, and what the lyric is maybe it's time to let the old you die. Now, I remember having this thought, like it was either like in a podcast or for a Facebook post, and it was kind of like, this isn't a new concept of maybe you need to like let the old you die, right? Like you're expanding, you're moving forward, you're not who you used to be anymore, you are becoming more of who you actually are, not who you think you are, but who you actually are deep down inside at your core. And I remember thinking like, I'm gonna have as the title, you need to kill the old you or something. And Facebook has this funny thing when you write certain posts like that with those words in it, they get all freaked out. But I wanted to have it be kind of a slap in the face to get people to read it, but to really understand that this is really like our life is about letting our former selves die, that maybe it's time to let the old you die. That maybe it's time that, what's real for me right now is I've been going through this process over the last maybe 5 months now of that. And I've been feeling it since the beginning of this year. There's someone different that I'm becoming. And I've just becoming like remembering. I'm talking about remembering who you are. A lot of spiritual texts talk about it's remembering. It's not about figuring out who you are. It's remembering who you are. And so I could feel that, but yet I was still trying to fit who I was into, or who I truly am, into this former me, this, the old me, if you will. And I think what people are so afraid of when it comes to this stuff is like, and listen, it's not as if who I was before was I was pretending to be someone. Not at all. That's who I was in that moment. It's like, I look around me right now. I live in beautiful Victoria, BC, Canada. It is fall. Leaves are turning, right? Take a look at nature. Nature is changing constantly. Dying and regrowth, right? The death and the regrowth. And so, the leaves are changing. They're all like beautiful colors. And then they're going to fall off the trees. And they actually already are falling off the trees. And then they'll be bare, a lot of the trees. It doesn't really get all that cold here in Victoria, but we don't even really get any snow. But a lot of the trees will lose their leaves. And they'll stay barren for, the winter months. And then buds start and there's new ones that grow, right? In order for that tree to keep growing, there has to be kind of a death, if you will. So the leaves, they change color, then they kind of get dry, and then they fall off the tree. And there's that continual regrowth, right? Look at the human body. I can't remember what the stat is of how many kind of trillion cells are replaced like all the time. Like just, our skin is kind of like becomes new every 28 days. There's a constant that. So why do we think that we're any different? And I think it's a lot of fears. I think it's the fear of change. I think it's the fear of, if I change, if I become more of who I truly am, are people still going to love me that love me? Am I going to be judged? Like, for example, if you go back and listen to my early podcast episodes, I'm sure you might be like, oh my God, what was she, like, this is not what she's talking about now. Well, yeah, that's because that's what was true for me then, right? And although this podcast is evergreen, meaning that as long as I continue to keep it going on iTunes, the episodes will just continue to be there. It's not like you listen, not like radio, right? Like, you can constantly keep listening. You can go back to old episodes like many of you do that find the podcast and start to binge listen to the almost 600 episodes that are now out. But when you listen to those old ones, I'm going to sound completely different. If you listen to my first podcast, Mom at 41, which is still on iTunes, by the way, you're going to hear an even different version of me too. Like, there is a constant expansion process that's going on. And sometimes it can be a rapid one. And sometimes it's kind of like a slow shift. That's what it's kind of felt like for me this last little bit. Like, it's been this slow shift. And I think one of the reasons why is I'm not trying to make a certain speed. I'm allowing it to open up, and for me to open up and shift as I need to, and not because I got a timeline. Because I think for you to truly open up for the old you to die, I think it can be a process, and I think it can also be a blink of an eye, or at least seem that way. And the reason that I say it can be both of those things, yes, that's a paradox, is that I think sometimes that we might hold back because we think it needs to take longer, but it can really be that quick shift. It can be. Or it can be, what I'm feeling for me is I'm just going to let it be the time that it is. And who the hell am I to judge and say it should take this much time? And why do I still kind of feel a little bit like uneasy and off and not truly like myself? And it's going to take what it takes, but maybe it's time to let the old you die. So here's your more tip for today, sister. I want you to open up your journal, and I want you to write at the top, it's time for the old me to die because, and start writing. Now listen, I'm not saying you suddenly, you're married and then you get divorced, right? Or you have kids and you just like walk out of the house, or, you have a job and you just like quit today, right? Or you have long hair and you cut it off and it's all short. Like, it doesn't have to be that dramatic piece of it. I know to say to let the old you die might seem like, die, like it's such a big word, and a lot of us have a lot of fear about death and what that means and stories and stuff, but like really just to let it go, to let the old you go. But again, right at the top of your journal page, maybe it's time, that's the lyric. It's time to let the old me die because, and start writing and just see what comes up. There might be some revelations and insights that you realize that the old you that you were holding onto, the present you, can never birth into the you that you're supposed to get deeper into because of all the stories about it. And you might notice that when you're journaling that you holding back and maybe not allowing the old you to die is creating a lot of consequences and costs in your life. Your children don't get to see a mom that's fully living her life. You start to numb yourself because you can feel this progression, this growth into a new you, but you're not allowing it to happen because of all these stories. Like, really take this journaling exercise to heart, sister, and see what insights and see what truths really come out as a result of it. So, 2 things, sister. Number 1, if you have not already reviewed the podcast, I would greatly appreciate if you do so. So go ahead and leave a 5-star review on iTunes. And by the way, it's really helpful if you actually do a written one, even if it's just a sentence, but people read them. And you're going to see there's some hater ones out there for sure. It's okay. It's going to come with it. It's what happens when I'm just really honest and real in who I am. I'm going to have some of that stuff too. But I'm willing to do that. I'll be the fall girl for it, but I would love for you to help me drown out some of those hateful ones with love. And so head over to iTunes and leave a 5-star review and a written one. Take a few minutes. I would greatly appreciate that. And number 2, I want to give back to you. I want you to be part of this Women Wanting More tribe, sister. There's so many of you that do not subscribe to the newsletter. Like, they're literally, what I did the stats recently, I think it's 43 or 4,400 of you that listen to the podcast every single day in close to 200 countries around the world. That's crazy. And yet so many of you are not receiving the benefits of being on the newsletter. I used to mail out daily. I now mail out about 3, maybe 4 times a week, unless there's something special that's coming up that I want to remind you about. But usually it's 3 to 4 times a week of the podcast episodes and the show notes, links to that, of blog posts that I've written, of just things that I want to do to bring you more value, sister. So in addition as well, too, I'm going to send you 3 training videos on exactly this, of like how to really remember who you are, to drop the stories and create new ones and really remember who you are. And so there's 3 amazing hour-long training videos that I created inside of a private exclusive Facebook group to really teach the women inside of that. And I'm going to give all those videos to you as my gift. So head over right now to drkarenosburn.com/action guide. So that's spelled DRKARENOSBURN.com/action guide. I'm going to send you all that, as well as the More for Action guide and how to start your day in a place of power. And if you're listening on your phone, open up the show notes. If you're on iTunes, you're going to see little details. Just click on that, and the show notes are all there. And you can click on the link and enter in your email, and we'll get you all hooked up on the newsletter then today. So I will talk to the next episode, sister. A life of more is just one step away from having the courage and the intention to let the old you die, so that you can really become more of who you fully are. I love and appreciate you.
To get the show notes of each Women Wanting More episode, including the How to Get More tip, subscribe to the newsletter at drkarenosburn.com/newsletter.